What if the biggest lie we're told since childhood is that happiness is the goal of life? We're taught to chase comfort, pleasure, and success as if those things can silence something deep within us. But what if life isn't designed to make us happy? What if it's designed to make us aware? Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "Life swings like a pendulum, backward and forward between pain and boredom." At first, that sounds depressing, but Schopenhauer wasn't being cynical, he was being honest. He saw what most of us try to avoid seeing, that the human condition is built on restlessness. We are constantly desiring, striving, wanting. Every time one goal is reached, another appears. Think about it. When was the last time you achieved something and actually felt satisfied for long? Maybe it lasted a few hours, a few days at best, then a quiet emptiness began to creep back in. That's the cycle Schopenhauer described, the will to live. It's not a will you consciously control, it's the biological and psychological force that drives every living thing to survive, to reproduce, to chase more. To Schopenhauer, this will is blind. It doesn't care about your peace, only about continuation. And because of that, life itself becomes a form of suffering. But here's the twist. The more we resist that truth, the more painful life becomes. Because when you expect constant happiness from an existence built on struggle, you create disappointment on top of pain. Understanding this doesn't make life darker, it makes it real. Every moment of desire feels like movement, a promise that something will make us whole. The new job, the new relationship, the new phone, the next achievement. But each of these is like drinking salt water. It relieves thirst only for a moment before leaving you more dehydrated than before. Schopenhauer called this the endless chain of desire. He believed that all living things are trapped in it, from the smallest insect chasing light to the human mind chasing meaning. We are wired to want, and the tragedy is that wanting keeps us from ever being still. Modern psychology agrees. The dopamine system, the brain's motivation network, rewards us for pursuit, not possession. That means the chase feels better than the having. The moment we get what we want, dopamine drops, and we start chasing again. So even our biology confirms what Schopenhauer intuited centuries ago. Desire is the root of all suffering. But this endless striving doesn't mean life is meaningless. It means that meaning doesn't come from escape, it comes from understanding the mechanism. When you realize that your mind will always chase, you stop identifying with the chase itself. You start seeing desire as a wave, not as your essence. And in that distance, that awareness, peace begins to appear. Schopenhauer didn't hate happiness, he simply didn't trust it. He saw that the more people cling to happiness, the more fragile they become. When life doesn't meet their expectations, they break. He believed the happiest people are not those who chase pleasure, but those who reduce their expectations of life. Not because they've given up, but because they've woken up. When you stop expecting life to be painless, every small joy becomes precious. A moment of silence, a kind gesture, a laugh that wasn't planned. These things become luminous against the backdrop of an imperfect world. This is not pessimism, it's realism with compassion. Pain becomes easier to bear when you stop believing it's an error.
In our modern age, where social media floods us with polished versions of everyone's life, this truth is more important than ever. We suffer not just because life hurts, but because we think it shouldn't. Everywhere you look, people are running from discomfort. We drown silence with noise, fill boredom with scrolling, and hide our anxiety behind productivity. But the more we try to escape pain, the tighter it wraps around us. Schopenhauer saw this long before the digital age. He wrote that life is a task to be done, not a paradise to enjoy. To him, all our distractions, pleasures, ambitions, relationships, are temporary shelters built on moving sand. We think we're escaping suffering, but we're really rearranging it. Modern psychology describes something similar, the hedonic treadmill. The more pleasure we experience, the more our brain normalizes it, forcing us to seek even greater stimulation just to feel the same level of satisfaction. In short, happiness fades fast, and we keep running faster to catch it again. This is why even successful people often feel strangely empty. They've climbed the mountain they were told would bring peace, only to find another one behind it. But here's where Schopenhauer's insight becomes radical. He didn't say we should stop striving altogether. He said we must see through it. Once we understand the nature of desire, that it's an endless motion, we stop believing that its end will save us. That awareness itself begins to loosen the grip of pain. There is a quiet strength that comes from understanding the inevitability of pain. When we stop fighting reality, we start to see its texture. Pain, boredom, joy, fear, they all belong to the same current. Schopenhauer admired the calm detachment found in Eastern philosophy, especially Buddhism. He saw in it a mirror of his own conclusion, that peace is not in pleasure, but in perception. When you accept that pain is part of existence, you stop demanding that life always feel good. And in that acceptance, you discover something paradoxical, a peace deeper than happiness. To desire nothing, to feel nothing, to be nothing, that is true freedom. Schopenhauer. At first, that sounds nihilistic, but it isn't about rejecting life, it's about seeing life clearly. When you stop being obsessed with how life should be, you begin to see it as it is. Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance, fully acknowledging reality without judgment. It doesn't mean liking pain. It means not adding resistance to it. A moment of sadness is painful, but the thought, I shouldn't feel this way, doubles the suffering. Acceptance removes that second layer. And that's what Schopenhauer meant by peace. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of inner conflict about pain. Every time we suffer, we're given a mirror, a glimpse into how attached we are to control. We want the world to bend to our comfort, to follow our expectations. When it doesn't, we call it unfair. But suffering, in Schopenhauer's view, isn't unfair, it's universal. It's the shared condition of all beings. He wrote, compassion is the basis of morality. Why? Because when we see that every living creature suffers, our arrogance dissolves. We stop measuring others by success, appearance, or status, and start seeing the common struggle beneath it all. This realization doesn't make life easier, but it makes it softer. Suffering connects us. It strips away the illusion of separation and makes us humble. When you realize everyone carries invisible wounds, your own become less isolating. Modern neuroscience echoes this idea. Empathy arises when we mirror others' pain. In a strange way, suffering isn't what divides humanity, it's what unites it. So maybe the question isn't, why do we suffer? Maybe it's, what will we do with our suffering? Most people experience pain unconsciously. They react, escape, and repeat. But awareness changes everything. When you become conscious of your suffering, when you watch it instead of being consumed by it, pain becomes a kind of teacher. You begin to see patterns, how the same desires return in different forms, how fear hides behind ambition, how emptiness disguises itself as busyness. Schopenhauer believed that wisdom grows out of pain because suffering breaks illusions. It forces us to see reality without comfort's filter. The cheerful ignorance of youth fades, and in its place comes clarity. Just as one's face is reflected in water, so one's life is reflected in suffering. This idea connects directly to Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the hidden aspects of ourselves that we reject or suppress. When we suffer, the shadow emerges. It shows us what we've been avoiding: weakness, insecurity, envy, fear, guilt. Facing it hurts, but it's the only path to wholeness. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So suffering isn't the end of the road, it's the beginning of consciousness. Every pain is an invitation. Will you run from this, or will you look at it until it teaches you something? That question separates those who grow from those who repeat. If Schopenhauer saw suffering as inevitable, Nietzsche saw it as transformative. He admired Schopenhauer but refused to stop at pessimism. Where Schopenhauer said, "Life is pain," Nietzsche answered, "Then let's make pain meaningful." Nietzsche believed that greatness comes not from comfort, but from struggle willingly embraced. He called it amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not just accepting pain, but saying yes to it, to all of it. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. He warned that modern people, in their comfort and safety, were losing their strength. Without pain, we lose depth. Without struggle, we lose soul. In a way, Nietzsche was calling us to do what Schopenhauer only observed, to use suffering as fuel. Every great creator, thinker, or innovator has done this. They've transformed pain into expression, grief into art, despair into insight, failure into philosophy. That's what the will to power really means. Not dominance over others, but mastery over one's own suffering. Pain becomes a trend of alchemy, something that, if endured consciously, turns into wisdom, empathy, and courage. When you stop asking, "How do I stop hurting?" and start asking, "What is this pain showing me?" you move from resistance to reflection. That's where psychological and philosophical growth meet. Pain is often a sign that a belief, identity, or expectation is dying. Maybe you believe life should always be fair, or that love guarantees happiness, or that success means peace. When reality disproves those beliefs, the ego suffers, but the self evolves. Modern existential psychology calls this process meaning reconstruction. We suffer most when life violates our story of how it's supposed to be. But if we rewrite the story, not to erase pain but to include it, we become stronger. Schopenhauer's realism, Jung's shadow work, and Nietzsche's amor fati all point to the same truth. Pain is not the enemy of meaning. It is the path to it. The moments that break us also build us, if we don't close our eyes to them. There's a strange peace that comes when you no longer need everything to be pleasant. You stop fearing bad days, awkward emotions, even failure. You begin to live in what Schopenhauer called the quiet denial of the will. He didn't mean giving up on life. He meant living without clinging, to act without obsession, to desire without illusion. It's the difference between holding life, like a possession, and holding it like an open hand. The more a man has renounced, the more he enjoys. Schopenhauer. This state is not cold detachment, it's calm engagement. You still love, create, and strive, but you do it with awareness that all things pass. You begin to see the rhythm of existence, pleasure, pain, calm, chaos, as one single dance. And then, strangely, life stops hurting so much. Not because it has changed, but because you have.
Today, we live in an era that sells comfort as a product. Endless entertainment, instant rewards, digital validation, all designed to distract us from the natural discomfort of existence. But the result isn't happiness, it's anxiety. Because deep down, the mind knows it's running in circles. Our ancestors faced real pain and built meaning from it. We face artificial pleasure and lose meaning in it. Schopenhauer's insight feels prophetic here. We're still the same restless creatures, only now armed with technology that amplifies our avoidance. To find peace in this world, one must do the opposite of what society teaches. Stop escaping, stop numbing. Sit with the hurt. Understand it. That's where clarity lives, in the raw awareness that life was never meant to be painless, only felt fully. Maybe life isn't beautiful despite pain. Maybe it's beautiful because of it, because pain sharpens perception. It makes joy more vivid, love more sacred, time more precious. When you've suffered deeply, you stop taking simple things for granted. A quiet morning, a friend's voice, the warmth of sunlight. Suffering turns ordinary moments into small miracles. The world is full of suffering. It is also full of the overcoming of it, said Helen Keller. Even Schopenhauer, the great pessimist, found beauty in art and music because they offered temporary escape from the will's endless striving. In those moments, he said, we become pure knowing subjects, free from desire. That's perhaps the closest thing to peace a human can feel, the quiet awe of simply being. So, why does life hurt? Because to live is to strive, to desire, to feel, and all of that comes with pain. But to understand pain is to stop being its victim. You don't have to worship suffering, nor fear it. You only have to see it clearly as part of the design. When you do, pain transforms from an enemy into a guide. Every wound you carry is a map pointing you toward what still needs to be known, accepted, and integrated. And every time you follow that map, you become more real, more grounded, more alive. Schopenhauer taught us the nature of pain. Jung taught us to look inside it. Nietzsche taught us to rise above it. Together, they whispered the same truth. Life hurts, and that's okay, because hurt is how you wake up.